Hey, this is Steve Bloom, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Today on episode 87 of the Cinema Geeks,
we launch a brand new review series for 2016.
As we take a closer look at the world of video game films.
All that and more coming up on episode 87 of the Cinema Geeks.
That's right, it's episode 87 of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks, Kevin Optimus Solo. Joining me today is Hard Candy Mandy. Hello.
what up?
What up? And Movie Revolt Dan. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Not too shabby. And joining us is Mr. Fridley Scent. Hello, Matt.
I finally made it.
You made it back. You're back home. And like we said in the intro, today we're going to be kicking off one of a number of, I guess, special series, you could say, that we'll be doing over the course of 2016 to kind of change things up from the regular episodes. Obviously, one of those, as teased last year when we did our Tarantino retrospective, will be our next director series, in which we'll be doing the films of Miyazaki. And that'll be starting up here sometime in April. So that'll be one of the series of episodes that we have for you that's kind of outside of the box. We also have something planned to kind of somewhat coincide with our 100th episode coming up later in the summer, which will have a series of episodes related to that. And then, like we said in the intro, today we're starting our last of our special series, and that will be a series of podcasts devoted to the world of video game films. And this is inspired by a couple different things, but mostly based on the release schedule for this year. We noticed kind of as we were looking over all the different films coming out when we were making our most anticipated list, as well as our box office predictions, that there is a slew of films coming out this year that are based on video game franchises. We have Assassin's Creed coming out in December, I believe. We have Warcraft coming out, and then we have a couple actually animated films coming out in the Angry Birds movie and a Ratchet and Clank film. And then there's a few more obviously slated for next year as well. So it seems like there's kind of a rash of video game films coming out. So we thought it would be a good idea to take a look back at the history of video game films, because much like the month of February, Dan, video game films don't necessarily have the greatest reputation.
No, not in the least. And we're going to find out why very shortly.
So we're going to look at that and see how much that is warranted. Is it warranted that video game films get a bad rap? Because I've heard a couple different times where there's been a video game film coming out and people are saying, well, this could easily be the best video game film ever, or it could finally be the first good video game film. So we'll see if there's some hidden gems that we've just maybe missed along the way, or if they've all been subpar, I guess is one way to put it. So we're going to do this in the only way for us to kind of handle this in a way that's not going to take like a billion podcasts is we're going to separate these based on franchise. So what I mean by that is we're going to give you one episode for each video game franchise that has had a film made out of it. So when we get to the likes of something like Resident Evil, we're not going to give you a podcast on Resident Evil and Resident Evil Apocalypse and Resident Evil Extinction and Afterlife and Retribution. We're just going to give you one episode on Resident Evil as a whole, probably just mostly focusing on that first film. And by doing that, we can narrow the list down to about 20 video game franchises that have had films. I won't go over the whole list. You'll kind of hear them as we go through. And we're going to, for the most part, I think, do this in chronological order unless something dictates that we should do it a little bit different. So we're going to start off today by looking at the very first one, and that is from 1993. And we'll be talking in a little bit about the Super Mario Brothers live-action film. Dan, we're also basically, I guess, by looking over this list, we're mainly just talking about the live-action films. I don't know how many animated films there have been based on video game films. I don't know if there's a lot or not, but I guess I didn't consider that when we were making this list. And we're also not necessarily considering movies that might have a variety of video game references, or something like a Wreck-It Ralph, or something like Pixels that might have different, nods and references and different characters. We're talking about something that was basically supposedly supposed to be some type of straight adaptation of the video game.
Yeah, so, I don't really know. I mean, I know some animated films, mostly like direct-to-video, like Halo has a few and whatnot. But yeah, it's mostly just the live-action theater release that were supposed to be, franchise stars in some cases. So that's our main focus.
Yeah, and we're not looking at stuff like Pokemon the movie or anything like that. So we're kind of basically strictly looking at the live action kind of bigger, wide release films. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of Super Mario, the way we kind of are going to do this, we're going to bypass our normal news and all that kind of talk, and we're going to just basically spend the whole episode really dissecting these films and kind of, for better or worse, getting into the nitty gritty of them. And I think there's two good ways to look at these films, and we'll get into those in a second. But what I first want to get into is, what is your guys' experience? Because this will range. It's going to be kind of silly with Super Mario Brothers, I guess, because that's kind of universal and everybody knows that. But as we kind of progress into maybe not as mainstream, widely known games, we'll start off with everybody's like background and history with that video game film, with that video game franchise. What kind of knowledge are they coming with? Are they coming with no knowledge of the video game or a lot of knowledge, etc.? So I assume this one's a pretty easy question, but Dan, where do you come from when it comes to Super Mario Brothers? How would you rate your knowledge of that franchise?
I'd probably say I am a moderate when it comes to knowledge of the video game franchise of Super Mario Brothers. Like you mentioned, like most people, I don't know how you could be our age and not play a Mario Brothers game. I had a Nintendo, I had a 64, played Mario 64 a great deal. Probably one of my, if I never did a favorite video games list, but it probably would be up there for sure. But haven't really played like the newer stuff post like GameCube, I guess, or Wii. Like that's where I kind of my knowledge falls off. I did watch a little bit of the cartoon as a kid. I don't remember much of it. Just Captain Lou Albano is like the only thing that kind of that is in my brain at all. But yeah, so I guess I would say I'm right there with the average person when it comes to Mario Brothers.
Matt, what about you? What would you say is your experience? Are you an expert in the Mario Brothers world?
Hey, paisanos! I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at least a hard 8, if not a 9 on Mario knowledge. I'm like fan fiction level, like fan fiction writing level of knowledge of Super Mario. And especially on particular characters, like there are some characters who I've hunted down every Mario Brothers episode that they were in, every game, like Princess Daisy, the lesser known princess of the Mario world. Like I wanted to know everything about her once, so I actually went on the virtual console on the DS and bought like her first couple of games and beat them. So like and I've played maybe not every Mario game, but most of the Mario games, all the way from the NES through the Wii U, which I have now, nice, including like Woolly World and Super Mario RPG and all the little weird ones out to the side.
All right, so you I think are the most knowledgeable then in the franchise. Maybe I speak too early, but for me, I would say like as far as the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, GameCube, my knowledge is pretty good. I'd probably be in like the 8 range out of 10. Anything after that, I'm pretty ignorant of. I know that they exist, but I haven't played them, beat them, that type of stuff. But I have a general feeling for the world and the characters that are in there. Amanda, did you play some Mario Brothers back in the day?
I can get it in some Mario Kart, but I wouldn't say that I'm as on it as you, Matt, but might be a little bit lower than you, Dan. Lower moderate, I guess. We're going to say that one.
So we all have some, obviously, knowledge of Mario Brothers. That'll be different as we go through, because there's definitely going to be some films that are coming out on games that I have no knowledge of, so that'll be interesting. I thought one of the best ways to do this, guys, was to look at it in two different ways and kind of break it into two halves. And I think in the first half, or the first section, I'd like to look at this as how well is this film, or how accurate do the films depict the video game they're based on? Is it a good adaptation? Do you feel like you're watching a version of the video game, and kind of how well do they represent that world? And then kind of to flip it on the other half, to look at, video game aside, how well is the film as a film? Just standing by itself from a film aspect, from maybe from acting, directing, visual effects, and that type of stuff. How well does the film hold up just on its own, regardless of if it's accurate to the video game or not? So let's get into the video game part first. And for those people that don't know what we're talking about, maybe you have never seen the film, but this is a 1993 live-action film billed as a science fantasy adventure comedy film. And it stars Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, Dennis Hopper, and a few other people, but those are the main individuals. And to give you guys a feel for how it did as far as the box office, Rotten Tomatoes, and that type of thing, it had a budget of $48 million, and it made $20.9 million. So if we were doing this in the Fantasy Film League, this would be a negative 3-pointer because it did not even make half of its budget. So budget-wise, not well. I also, Box Office Mojo actually does have a category or a genre for video game adaptation. Now, granted, they are going to be including all of the sequels and the different versions of one, even though we're only looking at the first one. It does also include stuff like Pokemon, the first movie, and stuff like that. But according to them, and they're ranking it based on 35 video game films, this would be in the 21st spot. So it ranked 21 amongst 35. So not a good showing at the box office. Even for its year, it was barely in the top 75. When it comes to Rotten Tomatoes, Dan, any guesses?
Let's go with, it's got to be like less than 10%, I would have to assume. It's hard because it's before, it's in the 90s, so like there's probably like 20 reviews, not as many, but I'm going to go like 10%.
And I think that's what is helping it a little bit, is that it's only based on 33 reviews. So not a lot of people willing to apparently go back and watch this and write a review on it. It currently has a 15%. So slightly above your mark, but still pretty awful when it comes to Rotten Tomatoes. So bad Rotten Tomatoes, bad box office. We'll just kind of set the stage with that a little bit. But Matt, since you are the most kind of, I guess, quote unquote, the most knowledgeable in the franchise, if we're just looking at this from a video game perspective, let's start digging into that a little bit. What things do you think it did well, or did it not do well when it comes to representing the Mario world on the big screen?
Oh boy, things it did well as far as being a Mario.
Do we need to
Super
pause for
Mario?
a while? You come up with those?
I can't. I mean, we all remember how in Super Mario World, like, there was a meteor that killed off the dinosaurs and then created an alternate dimension.
Because that's how meteors work. It's like, no.
That's how meteors. And then also, all of those guys are descended from dinosaurs and hate mammals, but have skin and hair. Aren't really affected by cold like a reptile would be.
Also, I remember that every level, your main goal was to hit somebody with some type of de-evolve or evolve ray.
Yeah, I mean, that was how Birdo happened, I'm sure.
I will say, I think they got the plumbing, like that element. Like they're good plumbers. Like, I think they were legit plumbers.
I don't know, in that one scene, Leguizamo is literally just reaching for 3 different, like, whatever you want to call it, handles to turn. Like, it's just like, what can I turn? I can turn this, okay, and then I'm gonna go over to this pipe and turn this. It was
they at least spent some time, because apparently that's what everyone loves about Super Mario Brothers is the plumbing. They wanted to make sure that they got that hammered down.
Just like everyone loves the political aspects of Star Wars. That's why you need to hammer it home.
All right, Matt, did you have anything that they did well, though, besides what Dan mentioned with the plumbing aspect?
I think what sums it up perfectly is when we were watching it the other night, Amy turns to me and goes, "Is Mario from Brooklyn?" I was like, "I don't know, he's Italian in origin." And that about sums it up. It kind of looks like it might be right if you don't know anything about it.
Okay, Dan, they do have some names of things that did exist in the video game world. They have Bob-ombs, they have mushrooms, they have somebody named Big Bertha, Spike, Izzy, Goombas. They have somebody named Mario, Luigi, Princess Daisy, and Koopa. Does that give them any credit? They got some names right.
Yeah, they did. They used names, so they did. That is an accomplishment there. They got Mario Brothers. Though, is Mario's real name in the video game Mario? Is that his...
Actually, officially, his name is Mario, but that wasn't officially accepted in the Mario canon until like the last 5 years.
Oh wow!
It was an internet joke, when this movie got popular enough on the internet for internet jokes to exist, but wasn't officially accepted by Nintendo until sometime in the last 5 years.
Interesting. I mean, trying to think of what they did well. Like, I guess in a sense, maybe like there was an attempt to try to make a mythology out of like Mario, because I mean at that point there's no story to Mario really beyond just saving the princess. So
Right.
I mean at least there was an attempt. How great that attempt was, or if that attempt should have been made, that's questionable. I guess I did, trying to think of some positives. I at least thought though it didn't represent the game at all or any way, shape, or form, some of like the set designs or character designs were at least interesting. Maybe not fantastic, but they were at least like, I don't know, like something about them at least looked somewhat charming and like a cheap, like a midnight movie type of way. But yeah, I can't really think of much that really made it feel like that they were incorporating the game. Usually when they were trying to, it was super forced and really awkward.
I will say that, if Spike and Iggy were actually human beings, I guess, then I guess maybe they would look like that. I could see part of their character in the actors that they chose to play that. Amanda, did they get anything right as far as the video game world? They had some coins in there. There was coins that you could collect.
There was
some
like a
pipes.
mention of coins.
There was some pipes that they went
pipes and like an underground thing.
I was worried for the first 15 to 20 minutes. I'm like, I haven't seen a pipe yet. I need somebody to actually go into a pipe and come out another end. They did have some sounds good. You hit something there. They did put some video game sounds in there.
I thought the look of like the bombs were pretty cool. I don't know about the mushrooms. I'm like, weak, but at least they had some true to form stuff in there.
Okay, obviously there's going to be more that we can pick on, so we've mentioned a few of them. I got to say, one of the, as far as looking at the bad things, the things that don't work with the video game, one of the biggest things that I couldn't get over for maybe the first half of the film is how do they somehow overlook the fact that they have them wearing the wrong colors for the first half?
The whole movie, basically, yeah.
Like
they're wearing opposite colors.
Yeah, Luigi's in red.
He's like red the whole time.
And Mario's in like a green or like a darker color for at least half the film. Did you guys notice that?
Even when they go to the club, Luigi's the one in the red suit.
Right. It wasn't until they like actually got up in their whole gear that all of a sudden they're in their right colors, and I'm like, why would you miss that?
Which isn't even their clothes; it's clothes they stole.
Right. Man, I don't know. Like, to me, if you're going to do this, there should be a ton of video game tie-ins to make you feel like you're in that world. I thought the bomb looked cool, but was executed terribly. The Goombas, I guess, for that time period, I mean, that was a cool, like, effect.
I thought they looked scary as shit. They scared me when I was little, and they still scare me now.
There's something freaky about them. I don't know, like, just the design. I did like the little Yoshi, like the little...
Oh, yeah.
Like that was decently done. Like that was like that's like the person who did that, they did a good job. Now they showed up. Maybe not everyone.
That was all that they did on the whole film, though, because at that time that would have taken the rest of the time.
It's like, you know what? I'm gonna do my thing. Everything else might be chaotic, but I'm gonna make this Yoshi look badass.
I had legitimately forgot that he was even in the film.
What?
I forgot that he was a part of this film.
I feel so bad for him the whole time. I'm like, poor little dude.
He did get stabbed. I was a little thrown off.
He did get fucking stabbed.
I was like, they just stabbed Yoshi.
They stabbed him, dude.
This movie is based on a game for 12-year-olds, but is a little too adult for them.
They set a dude on fire. It's like
they did do that as well.
Someone gets vaporized and not like 100%, enough that there's body parts left.
The amount of care, though, that they had for some of the things that they were doing that didn't, like, obviously I've never seen any of the Mario games where somebody's head goes in like a machine that de-evolves them or evolves them or whatever, but
what he really is going to be the plot? Like, he can't just run in a line for an hour and a
I wanted
half.
some of that. I literally halfway through was like, why are we getting no running, jumping, or grabbing onto anything, or ducking, or like, I didn't want it to be like a side scroller, but I thought there could be some elements that they could have done with that.
Here's the thing, like, video games before the PS2 look like they have no story, but some of them have the most in-depth and rich stories. Like, everyone thinks Mario is just a guy who runs from left to right trying to save a princess, but if you go into the manuals of Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers 2, and I know Super Mario Brothers 2 is just Doki Doki Panic, whatever, but the storyline that they set down in the instruction manuals of those games are intense and not only dark, like, darker than this movie. Like, every brick, every power-up is a member of the Mushroom Kingdom that Koopa had his magician turn into, and Mario has to crush the people he's trying to save in order to save their royalty.
Man.
Like, they could have done a straight adaptation.
I mean,
had
some
it been
of those
just a
video
start.
game films had like the warships and stuff, and some different settings that you could do. Even one of the things that they did have the mushroom in there as like, I guess, a power up, but they did nothing with it.
Yeah, I don't think they ever used it.
He like kept being shown these things that the whatever you want to call the fungus was holding or trying to give to him, but they never really did anything with it except for the babam. Like,
Mario was originally named Jumpman, and he jumps maybe twice.
It's because they hired Bob Hoskins, and it's like he's like, I'm not jumping. It's like, what are
that's
you
the other
doing?
thing. Can we get two actors that are at least somewhat believable as brothers? Like Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo? Come on.
It's like they are not at all at the same ethnicity, I think, in any way, shape, or form. But
And they're definitely not at the same age, so
no.
that just seemed weird to me. Like, I'm like,
Bro, I'm 16 years older than my youngest little brother.
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, Mario and Luigi are not necessarily depicted as a big age difference in the video game. Like,
How can you tell? They're like pixels.
They both got mustaches and stuff.
He's Italian. He's really hairy. Okay.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a Guido in real life? I have.
Yes. And yeah, I don't know. Anything else that you guys want to bring out that they didn't do well as far as the actual video game stuff that they kind of threw in there?
Man.
I'll give one positive note. You were mentioning all the things that they named right. One small hat tip was that, like, I think it was a bar was named the Thwomp Bar.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I liked that.
What about the moon shoes or whatever you want to call those things? What was like? Mario has a lot of different power-ups. Like, he gets bigger. He can throw fireballs. He can fly. He can do a lot of different things. Is there a video game in which he has shoes that he puts on that he can jump real big?
If so, he does it right before the start of the game.
Just like, I've never seen that. I wish I would have had those when I was trying to jump over the flag when I got to the end of the level, because I never had those. But even like I said, even when they were putting those heads into the machine to like evolve or de-evolve, was it just me, or did the first one, his head was in there for like a good, like, I don't know, 10 seconds maybe? And everybody else, it was like it wasn't ever even in. It was like they dipped it in and then it was done.
They didn't have money to do that effect again, Kevin.
That's how much they cared about that visual effect. They're like, do I really have to stick my head in this thing? Just for a second. Like, man, I don't know. The other thing I didn't necessarily care for was the timeline. Like, and I know that goes back to the de-evolve and evolve, but they had like 4 different scenes or screens that were showing Brooklyn at different levels or different time periods. It's like Brooklyn billions of years ago, Brooklyn a little while ago, Brooklyn now. Like, I didn't need that either. I don't know how that plays into anything. And it's not like they did a whole lot with that besides that they were going to turn people back into one form or advance them into another form. But all right, so if you were giving this a score on how well it represents the video game it's based on, Matt, on a 1 through 10, let's say, how well does it represent the Mario world?
2 or 3. Dan,
what about you?
Yeah, I'd say the same. It's probably about a 2.
Amanda?
Yeah, I'll say 3 or 4.
3 or 4 for you? I'll give it a 3. They named some things, right?
They did name some things.
Big Bertha was in there. I don't know what the point of that was, but
the well-known Mario character of Big Bertha.
Wasn't it like a big fish or like a big whale or something?
Slightly bigger version of the fish character.
Oy vey. All right. And also, I never remember any of the video games that music had an effect on the. I guess maybe a little bit. Did the music ever make Goombas dance in any of the video games? I don't remember that too much. Maybe if you played like the flute, you could get to a different level, but it didn't like put everybody in a trance. So, all right. So not good scores as far as it goes as far as representing that world, which I think is somewhat a shame. I think there was some options in the Mario universe that they could have done. I don't think all of it. I understand, the thought process might be, look, we're adapting a video game into a movie, which at this point really hadn't been done. So they might have been limited from their creativity as far as what they could do and coming up with ideas of how to do that. But I think there were some options. Like you said, there was some material in the instruction manuals they could have used. Some of the stuff that Mario is known for, I think, could have somehow worked its way in there. I think even in that setting where you have the street and you have different sidewalks and different like balconies and stuff like that, there was options for running and jumping and doing some of the side-scrolling stuff. So
Did that city look like Champion City from Mystery Men?
I have to rewatch Mystery Men.
It reminded me a lot of that.
All right,
I
so
thought the look of it.
I didn't mind the look of it. It just seemed like none of the stuff in there fit from the Mario world. Like, there's a ton of different characters in the Mario universe that didn't find their way into this film. So not a good score when it comes to representing the video game world it's based off of. Dan, what about as a film, even if it's, regardless of if it's accurate or not to the video game, it could still be a good film, right?
Oh, definitely. I think that's certainly possible. But then that's not the case here. It's such, in a way, it's almost though, like, I commend it because at least it fails in a really interesting way, because it's almost like, what am I watching? And it's like, how did they even greenlight this and think that this would be, like, how did this all come together? And you can tell, though, it's just this, just even reading the history of it, how so many people had different ideas, and like this, like how it started as one thing and they had to do reshoots and rewrites and all over the place. It's so evident in this, and even like the actors at times, I think you can tell, like, they realize that, what am I doing in this movie? But in some ways, though, it's like it is like that car wreck type of film, in a sense. But, like, you know, the plot makes no sense whatsoever. Things just randomly happen. Characters are like, the acting is questionable. I mean, some of it's okay. Like Dennis Hopper is fine. Bob Hopkins and John Leguizamo are fine. The person playing Daisy, she was lifeless as could be. No wonder that she's not done anything really since then. But I don't know. As a movie, I'm just like, I don't even know what just happened. Like, I don't know what that thing is. But
I have not seen this film probably since I was a child. And so I was going in not really remembering if it was good, bad, or indifferent. I just remember that Bob Hoskins was in it. I didn't even remember John Leguizamo was in it, but I remember Bob Hoskins was in it in a little bits and pieces. But I was not prepared for what I watched either. I thought it was going to be at least a slightly better than what it was. As far as the acting goes, I think I like Bob Hoskins, and like you said, you know, Dennis Hopper and John Leguizamo are legit actors. I don't know if they're necessarily given their A game in this. I mean, Dennis Hopper seems to always do his thing, but
He's basically the dude from Waterworld in this.
yeah,
kind of is kind of like the same dude. Yeah, but he's more of a germaphobe. That's basically the thing.
Matt, what about you? As like a film goes, was there overall, did you get any enjoyment, or were you like Dan? Were you confused as to what you just watched?
Oh, I mean, you know what text I sent you 15 minutes into it. I was like, what even is this movie? Because I still don't know. I mean, there are, like, just visually, there's a lot to take in, especially in the alternate dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the car design is crazy. There's almost like a nonsensical, like, our whole dimension. The whole dimension is running out of resources, but we're still gonna build the world's tallest building in our dimension and covered in spikes.
It was almost as if the world that they created, it almost reminded me of something like almost like the Dick Tracy live action film, where there's a lot to look at and there's a lot to kind of take in, but the difference is that seemed like it had some direction behind it, and this one just seemed to be all over the place. Like, I wasn't ever sure how one thing really tied into the other. It just seemed like we're accidentally walking through and stumbling through and finding ourselves here, finding ourselves there. So it just seemed like it lacked some type of cohesion as far as, like Dan said, the plot or anything like that. Amanda, maybe you're a little bit higher when it comes to the actual film. I know you have watched this more times than I have. Do you find it enjoyable as a film, or what works from just a movie standpoint?
I definitely do. I've seen this a ton of times. I'll revisit this over and over again. It's a lot of fun. I like to just kind of turn my brain off and laugh and have fun, or just kind of put it on in the background, whatever. But I think it's a fun ride if you aren't too attached to the property. I like the players. I thought they were all really interesting characters. Besides Daisy, she was kind of flat, and I was sad that it wasn't Peach. So, it definitely had some good points as far as visuals go. I really, really like the look of it and all the costuming and the colors. I think it's enjoyable.
Except for the colors that are wrong. I don't enjoy those. I can't get over that. But Dan, she mentioned the visuals, and like we said, this had like a $42 million budget. Do you see any of that money on the screen? Do you think it was effective when it comes to Yoshi and the transformation of the Goombas and some of the visual effects, or do you think there was some money wasted here?
I mean, some of that set design is pretty intricate in ways, like what they had to build, for like the prison and the city itself. I think that's probably where a lot of that money went. Also, I think it was the budget ended up going over budget because from when I was reading that the directors were very control heavy and things went longer than it should. So I don't think originally it was designed to be that much. So it's hard to say because like 42 million is compared to say back in 1994. I'm not sure like what that would even equate to. Like what's an equal film around that line. I mean, I think it's on par with most of the stuff of the time. Like I don't think it's like special effects wise is awful compared to it's no Jurassic Park or anything like that, of course, but I don't think it's super awful when it comes to the special effects. Some of it, like I think their ideas are bigger than their budget or bigger than what they can accomplish in some ways. I don't know. It's hard to say. I guess when it came to the whole idea of budget, like it doesn't really seem to. I don't think they wasted money on that. I think it's more so the script and editing and those elements, direction, and all that piece that really is what's causing it to be such a hodgepodge of different things.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a lot of the direction, the story, and the cohesiveness from that standpoint. Matt, now they did have some sound effects that were somewhat video game accurate. And as far as the music goes, the sound effects, and the other thing we didn't talk about was the introduction, and this is one of my pet peeves, is when you have a universe, and granted, maybe not as big a deal with this universe because there's not a ton of characters at this point maybe in the Mario world, but there's enough. What about the introduction of characters that didn't exist in the video game world? Obviously, we have on the human side, like the Scapelli aspect, the rival plumbers, almost like old school firefighters back in the 1800s, where the first person on scene gets to take over the job. We also had the good-natured guitarist who got turned into a Goomba halfway through. Do you feel like there was a need for these additional characters, or was there people in the Mario World universe that could have been used? And what were your thoughts, if any, on the music and the sound effects?
Well, that good-natured guitarist was a Mario character. It was Toad. It was Toad.
That's what it was supposed to be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why. I think that's why he had the spiral haircut, was to mimic a mushroom. I don't know why we had a guy.
I even heard them call him Toad, and I did not make that connection. Wow.
It's a guy whose name is Toad. His head is a mushroom. They put his head in and do a de-evolving machine that can turn him into a mushroom, and it didn't. Like, that's how little they cared for the source material. Is literally a guy got turned into a mushroom using the de-evolve machine. A guy who's supposed to be a mushroom got put into it and didn't even mushroom, even a little.
That's probably the movie in a whole. That's the nutshell.
That's funny, because that's what I was thinking watching it. I'm like, oh, maybe the fungus was because Toad, and like, oh no, he's gonna be all right. So they meant Toad as an actual toad. That's how they took that.
They didn't realize what it was actually talking about.
It was all backdoor Battletoads pitch.
What about... go ahead.
The Scapellis. So I don't know how the 90s Brooklyn worked, but in modern day, if I have a plumbing problem, I'm going to call a plumber. He's going to be like, I'm going to be here at that time. And I'm going to be like, okay. And then I'm not going to call every other plumber in the city. And then if it should be like, oh, you didn't show up first, you're not getting paid, even though you're a businessman that came out here and wasted your time.
That's how you order pizza.
Oh, no.
Whoever gets here first gets the money.
Yeah.
It's like,
now, granted, I get what they're doing because, like I said, that was a thing, but that was a thing in like the 1800s. Like, that was not a thing in the time period they're depicting. Like, I don't understand that at all. And going off of what Amanda just said, that she said she wished it would have been Princess Peach. Matt, what did you feel about the inclusion of Daisy? We've already said that the actress didn't necessarily do a great job with that character, but what did you think about the choice of including the lesser known of the princesses?
Well, that's another one is Daisy I believe is originally from the handheld, the Game Boy Mario series. And she's got an even weirder and richer story where the King Wart, who's like an alligator man from another planet, shows up and kidnaps her and takes over her kingdom, and you have to save her. So like that one even kind of fits this a little bit more. Instead of another dimension as another planet, and they could have done that, but like they called her Daisy because they wanted to give Mario already have an established love interest, I'm guessing. So the younger kid is the one who's kind of driving the movie. But like they named her Daisy, but then gave her Peach's hair color and Peach's like clothing colors. And then she was kidnapped by Bowser, which is more Peach than Daisy. Like, I don't know why they didn't just call her Peach and then be like... Because they clearly didn't care about the story originally. So just name her Peach and have her get with Luigi.
Yeah, I could see that too. Now, getting into some of our kind of maybe closing thoughts on some of it, it wasn't just that it didn't do well at the box office. It wasn't just that the critics didn't like it. Apparently, even the people involved did not necessarily like this film. Quote from Bob Hoskins, "The worst thing I ever did. The whole experience was a nightmare."
Wow.
Another time he was asked, "What is the worst job you've done? What has been your biggest disappointment? And if you could edit your past, what would you change?" And his answer to all three was Super Mario Brothers. John Leguizamo apparently disliked his role in the film, dissatisfied with the film's direction, and the studio wanted a more family-friendly film, while the directors wanted it to become more adult-like, so there was some kind of disharmony there. And that he seconded the fact that he knew that Bob Hoskins was not enjoying it either. And Dennis Hopper, quote, "It was a nightmare, very honestly, that movie. It was a husband and wife directing team who were both control freaks and wouldn't talk before they made decisions. Anyways, I was supposed to go down there for 5 weeks, and I was there for 17. It was so over budget." So apparently not even the people there enjoying it. Dan, any surprise from that?
Well, no, I also heard too that Bob Hoskins got injured multiple times. He almost drowned one time. He broke his hand. John Leguizamo, I think, also hurt his foot doing all these different things. So it's kind of like
there wasn't even any jumping. How did they get hurt?
That's why there wasn't. I guess they got. I don't know. So yeah, they got. I don't know how they got hurt or when or where, but yeah. So I'm not too surprised, and the idea that it's you had the directors who wanted something more adult and the studio wanting something more kiddie. You can see that because it is so conflicting like that, because you have a scene where you set someone on fire to this slapstick action sequence that's straight out of almost like the Beatles-esque movies back in the day, and kind of slapstick in that way. So you do see that constantly conflicting with one another in that way. And I remember watching it as a kid being like, this doesn't seem like it should be for me. But it's interesting. I'm not too surprised that people...
And I think the other thing...
Even Nintendo, I know, is notoriously does not like this movie.
I haven't met too many people, I guess, that have lauded any praises on this film. And I think the other thing that suffers, too, when you're kind of not on the same page with the direction you're going as far as the tone, whether it's for adults, whether it's kids, is, at least for me, and I want to get your guys' opinion on this, too, is it ended up with a product where there was no humor.
Well, what about that thug-ass old lady?
Which one?
She, struck them up and was trying to get their money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I get that, but, I was expecting more laughs. I was expecting more times where at least I chuckled, whether it be from nostalgic reasons or nods or just jokes, but I don't know if I laughed a single time. Did you guys find this humorous at all, Matt?
Yeah. No.
That's a no for you. Amanda, what about you? Did you chuckle more than just the old lady?
Maybe the first time, I don't know. I think the jokes after a while are kind of stale.
Yeah, Dan, funny movie?
Not intentionally. Usually I'm not laughing at it when I think it's supposed to be laughed at. Like the prologue, and I'm like, wait, that's not how science works in any shape or form. No. It's like that.
Also, didn't we know have an idea where the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs landed by the mid-90s? Because, it definitely wasn't Brooklyn.
No, it was not. It was an asteroid that killed everything, but yet let no trace except for a few fragments somehow.
Yeah, and yeah. Oh man, the fragment. I forgot that was a big part of the video game series too. I don't understand this quote though from Miyamoto, Mario's creator. The one thing that I still have some regrets about is that the movie may have tried to get a little too close to what the Mario Brothers video games were, and in that sense, it became a movie that was about a video game rather than being an entertaining movie in and of itself. Did he watch a different film? Because outside of the names, I don't think it was trying too close to be anything like the video games.
That's still too much.
I don't know. Dan, final thoughts for you, and then I'll give everybody a chance to get anything from the notes they took from the film as far as other things about the film. But do you think it is possible to make a good live-action film based on Mario Brothers?
You just need Captain Lou Albano, and you'll be fine. Man.
Or were they fighting a losing battle no matter what?
Is it possible? I guess it might be. I mean, I feel like looking at something like Wreck-It Ralph, like you could see what you could do in a way. I don't know.
Would it have to be more of an animated film? Do you think?
It could be. I guess with what Matt was saying, with a lot of it's like the story that's there that I wasn't even aware of. Maybe there is more there you could do. I think you'd have to go all in. I think this is like either go for it all the way where you are legitimately in some weird dimension where you're jumping off boxes and I don't know, just like go all in, or just don't do it at all. I guess would be. I don't think Mario's the game, or Mario's the template to how to to transfer over to a good movie. I think you'd be better with an animated show or something like that than you would with a live action film. But I guess we'll never know, because I don't think they're ever going to try again.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to make this venture either, because after this, I don't know, Nintendo canceled all their plans for films for a long time, as far as video game films. Amanda, what other notes do you have about the film that you didn't get to talk about yet, or what else would you like to chime in on? And then same question for you, as far as, do you think it would have been possible to make a decent film based on this franchise?
I think it's a little early on for me to say what's a good comic book movie and what's not. I think it's a little too early in our little, what did I say?
Video game.
Video game, yeah. I'm just so stuck on the comic books. The video game films, it's too early in our trek across this for me to really say. I know that I had fun with this, but it not being so true to the video game is little not fair to the video game. If you're going to do it, like Dan said, you probably should do it all the way. But as far as this one goes, I think there was some fun, laughable stuff in it too. Not maybe LOL for real kind of laugh, but I mean, like Matt said, the cars, their design's pretty cool. Like the retro tech and the fact that they're making fun of that nobody in their dimension can fucking drive. Like they have to be stopped. I thought that was pretty funny, and all their hairdos are cray. I like that, along with their costumes, and a pretty accurate justice system, I would say. Just other than that, yeah.
All right, Matt, what do you think? Is it possible for them to make a good Mario Brothers film, or would it have to be animated, or should they just never go anywhere near this franchise when it comes to films?
Well, first things, some weird things we haven't talked about. One, when they go out to their fancy dinner, right? Like before they even know about the other dimension, everyone's dressed up, except for whatever reason, Daisy is still wearing the dirt-covered cargo shorts.
Oh yeah, I noticed that.
It's like, who goes out? Like, I just came straight from work, even though I got off 6 hours ago and I didn't even shower. That was really weird. Also, all of the televisions and monitors in the alternate dimension were controlled by guns.
Yes.
But not the Nintendo brand light zapper. Like,
why couldn't you do that?
Why would you do a small detail like that and then mess it up? But can they make a good Mario movie? Can they make a good live-action Mario movie? I'm going to say yes. I don't think they can do a 10 out of 10 perfect film, but they could do something that's incredibly true to the story, that's going to be interesting for both kids and adults, if that they did just try.
If they tried. There seemed to be a lack of effort, or at least a lack of cohesive effort on this one. As far as your overall score out of 10, let's go around and see what everybody gives this. We gave it was just as an overall film. 1 out of 10. Dan, where would you go?
Man, I feel like I need to keep some room, because we are doing Double Dragon next week, so I don't know. Like I said, I think a movie like this is good to watch because it does give you perspective of what a bad movie really is, in a way where like sometimes you can kind of misconstrue of what a bad movie can be. But in a sense of at least I wasn't bored by it. I'll give it that. Like I never checked out because I was at least like I said, just wondering what exactly I was watching. So because of that, just because the sheer of craziness of it, I think I'll give it a similar score to how it was when it came to the video game. So I'll give it a 3 out of 10.
Matt, what about you?
Okay, so I think if there's two things I'm known for on this podcast, it's one, wanting something to be close to the source material, because if you're going to use the name, use the IP.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, loving to watch terrible movies with people in the same room. If you're watching this alone, it's a 2. Like, you're just going to be grinding your teeth, being like, this is upsetting. There's a couple of things that are okay, but not. If you've got any other people in the room, easily a 4. Like, I mean, it's great to point things out. You're going to notice things if you have someone else to talk to. Like, there are some really cool set design pieces, like the cars, like almost everything in the alternate dimension is really interestingly put, even if it doesn't always make sense or doesn't always work. But yeah, it's a flop of a thing.
All right, Amanda, so we got some low scores across the board so far. Where do you fall on this one? A little bit higher?
Maybe. I'll give it a 4. I think it's something I'm going to rewatch. I have fun with, and I think people can have fun too. And I think, along with what Matt said, I definitely agree. It's way more fun with somebody to poke fun at this while you're going through it.
I think I'm going to caveat my score by saying that the only way I would ever rewatch this is if it was with other people. I would never rewatch this alone. That's for sure. I'm going to be right in line, I guess, with most of you. Try to give myself a little wiggle room to score films worse than this, but I'll go with a 3 out of 10 for the overall film. I don't know how many films we do this whole thing that are going to be in the positive score. We'll have to wait and see. I haven't seen some of these films, so I shouldn't speak out of turn, but yeah, I'm going to definitely fall on a 3 out of 10. So not overwhelmingly glowing reviews or words about Super Mario Brothers, but maybe there will be as we go through and cover some of these other films. I didn't mention too many of them yet, but the next couple that we have coming out will be Double Dragon, like Dan mentioned, which came out a year later. And then we also have the original Street Fighter, which also came out in 1994. So 2 1994 films, Double Dragon and Street Fighter, will be next up on the docket for when we do our video game series. Also, like I said, we do have the Miyazaki spotlight coming up, and that will start with the 1979 film, The Castle. Amanda?
I can't remember now. Cagliostro?
Cagliostro. The Castle of Cagliostro, according to how you pronounce that word. So that will be the first up on the docket for that. Dan, real quick though, going back to the video games, is there one on the list that you're the most excited to watch, or are you dreading this whole thing?
Well, yeah, I regret a lot of things. I don't know. Looking at the list, though, I realized I've not seen the vast majority of the video game movies. Really a select few. And the one I think I'm probably the most intrigued about, the one I would like to go and see, would be Prince of Persia. Because I'm just curious, knowing what Jake Gyllenhaal's come into as like an actor, like if there was anything redeeming about that movie at all. Just curious about it. The one I'm probably least looking forward to actually is probably next week with Double Dragon. I watched the trailer of it to get ready, and I'm just like, this looks like it's going to be painful. We'll see, but that's probably the one I'm fearing the most.
I think, honestly, because you said you haven't seen a bunch of these, I think I've only seen 2 more the rest of the way. I think all the other ones are going to be first-time watches. Amanda, you've got a lot more, I think, experience with this genre maybe than I do or Dan does. Have you seen a majority of these, or is there...
I've seen hella movies on this list here.
Is there one that you haven't seen that you're looking forward to, or is there one that you've seen that you are actually really excited about watching again?
I think what I'm most excited about is to catch up with the Wing Commander, because I only started that, and it's got my boy Freddie Prinze in it. Really excited. So I'm interested to see that just because of that.
That was before he disappeared from the face of the earth.
Yeah, he's in my basement. What I'm really, really not looking forward to is rewatching Final Fantasy. I got sick super bad in Italy, and it was playing on Italian MTV on like a loop. So I was like forced to watch this because I had seen it before. I'm like, this is the only thing I can kind of know what's going on. And I'm probably gonna get a little stomach flu just from watching it. Like I'm like flashbacks from PTSD from watching that over and over again. But everything else, I'm excited for.
Okay, Matt. Anything that you know that you're looking forward to, or anything that you've never seen anything about that you're intrigued by?
I don't have the list, but I am on the Box Office Mojo video game adaptation page. And I got to imagine you're going to have the Blood Rain series on there.
Yep.
And I've got a lot of things to say about that one.
All right.
But Double Dragon, it's funny to hear Dan say what he's saying because, like, I watched Double Dragon sometime in the mid to late 90s because, I grew up playing the Double Dragon games. And I was like, oh, hey, this is coming on, on the TV guide, the paper TV guide. And I was like, I'm going to watch that. And I remember loving it. Like, I was a little confused because there's, like, a weird talisman that does something and it, like, floats. And I don't quite get what that was about. But it's got to have a lot of punching in it because that's all Double Dragon is.
You thought Mario would have some jumping in it, and it didn't have that.
Oh, so, no.
We'll have to wait and see about that. But as far as our question this week, we'd like to hear what you're looking forward to most when it comes to the video games, films that we'll be covering. Obviously, like I said, Double Dragon Street Fighter coming up first, and then we'll get into one of the ones that Amanda was looking forward to, Wing Commander, Mortal Kombat, and then Lara Croft Tomb Raider will be the first set of films. So let us know which ones you're looking forward to, or which ones you're regretting or wishing that we weren't partaking in and participating in as far as the review goes. Dan, anything that we didn't get off our chest as far as this little spotlight goes with the video game films?
No, that's all I got. So.
All right. So thanks for joining us this week for another episode of the Cinema Geeks. There's several ways for you to stay in contact with us or get in touch with the show or the website. The best thing to do is go to geekcastradio.com, find this episode post, click on it, and make a comment there. We will definitely interact with you there. You can also become a fan of us on Facebook by going to the Facebook page and searching out Geekcast Radio Network. You can follow us all on Twitter. The network Twitter is at Geekcast Radio. The show Twitter is at Cinema Geekcast. My Twitter is at Optimus Solo. Amanda, your Twitter is?
Hard Candy Mandy Eyes No Wise.
Dan, your Twitter is?
I am at Movie Revolt.
And Matt, your Twitter is?
Fridley Scent.
All right, so that is it for us. Be sure to check in next week for your next chance to listen to more from the Cinema Geeks.